Hi, my name is Aaron Wolf, and I've been a guitar teacher for many years. And one concern that I have when I have new students come to me is I don't really want to just make everybody do the same traditional classical thing, because the truth is the world doesn't need a lot more guitarists. It's very fun and enjoyable to play music on your own for your own sake, and everybody can benefit from learning all sorts of musical things. But I like to use a story that I learned of one of the guitarists I like a lot, whose name is Richie Havens. He passed away recently, but he's famous for playing at Woodstock, but other things. He's a famous singer-songwriter, and he didn't have a teacher like me when he was first learning to play the guitar. What he did was he had a guitar, and he was listening to a lot of music, and he played the instrument, and he didn't really like how that sounded, didn't know how to make good music with this, because if I just play this all day, it doesn't really sound like much. So he experimented with the tuning, and he kind of just adjusted things until it sounded good. With some experimentation, he found what most people would call an open tuning, where he has this certain chord, and he didn't know what to call it. Later on, somebody came along and said, "Oh, you're playing a D chord." But that wasn't important. The important thing was that he just found it by experimenting, because he persisted, and he didn't know really how to play either. So what he did was, he just strummed the guitar like this. And then he just sort of used his thumb to push down on the strings to change to different chords. And that's it. That's actually very similar to how a lot of old blues guitarists used to play with a slide. This is just a heavy piece of glass, and you could use anything that's glass or metal or anything that's just heavy enough to stop the strings vibrating at a certain spot. Then you just touch this to the strings, and you can get all sorts of stuff, and people evolved this into lap steel style playing and all sorts of country things and blues styles where you can do something like this. Now, in Richie Havens' case, somebody came along and said, "You're an idiot, you don't know how to play the guitar, that's not how you do it with it on your lap like that. You sit up like this, and you have to have it in this certain classical position." And so Richie Havens didn't know better and said, "Okay," and so he put the guitar up like this, and then he kept putting his thumb around here like this, so he kept playing this way anyway. And then he kept playing that way for, well, the rest of his life, and he made all sorts of interesting songs, and he never learned how to play any of the types of things anybody else was doing. So instead of playing the Beatles the same way that George Harrison would play it, he had to figure out some way of making it sound kind of like the Beatles, his way, and he basically failed. He didn't get it to sound like the Beatles, but what he got was his own interesting sound that's musical and enjoyable. And it would have been kind of a shame if he had had some teacher who just made him sound like everybody else, because he might not have ever even done as creative things as he did. So I think it's very important that students learn to explore and try things, and there's a certain attitude that Richie Havens had, whether he learned it somewhere, it's just part of his personality. He was the sort of person who kept going and explored things and experimented until he found something that was artistic or meaningful to him. And that's really a big key of this. It's just about persistence, and it's about trying things and experimenting. And even if you do learn traditional things, which I've done, you can learn a lot by breaking out of the box and not necessarily doing things just because they're the standard way to do them. So I encourage everybody to just explore, and you can do all sorts of different things. Play the instrument as you like, snap on the strings, you can bang on it like a drum, and you can easily find just about everything out there has been explored by creative people. But there's also something involved in being creative and figuring it out for yourself. So go and explore and have fun.